The New York Rangers lose 1-0 to the Capitals, and Jonathan Quick deserved much, much better.
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1401 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, and today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app right now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. And we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So the Rangers, they got goalie'd, plain and simple. They lose 1-0 to the Washington Capitals last night, a game in which the Rangers, I thought, for the vast majority of the game, had the better of play. Caps got off to a good start in this one, but I thought the Rangers, found their game relatively quickly. And it's one of those games where you're down by 1-0 and you're still down by 1-0 and you're still down by 1-0. And you really begin to feel like, okay, that equalizer is on the way. Charlie Lindgren's playing great, but the Rangers are producing enough opportunities where they're at the very least going to get this game tied. Maybe you end up in overtime tied 1-1, and then you take your chances with the the 3-on-3 format, potentially even the shootout. But obviously that didn't happen. The bottom line, Charlie Lindgren was fantastic in this game, 35 save shutout. And as far as the biggest reasons why the Rangers lost this game, he's like all of the first top 10 reasons why the Rangers lost this game. I saw a stat. This was kicking around on social media this morning, maybe even last night as well. This comes to us from Evolving Hockey. So since 2021, 2022, 334 regular season games for the New York Rangers from then until now. And in those 334 games, this is considered the 7th best goaltending performance that the Rangers have gone up against in those 334 games. So that'll give you an idea. I mean, some people are more into the analytics than others. I think they certainly have their place. And when you see a stat like that and you look at the way Lindgren played in this game last night, it's kind of like, yeah, no, that sounds about right. So, yeah, unfortunate, obviously, they ran into a goalie that was on top of his game, stood on his head, and again, the reason why the Caps won this game. But there was a lot to like in this game if you're a fan of the Rangers as well. And I think this game kind of serves as an example of it's okay for the Rangers to lose a game and all of us to not have a complete meltdown about it. Sometimes you just get beat, and sometimes you run into a hot goalie as the Rangers did in this one. Sometimes you just don't get the puck luck, and this is just the way it shakes out. And I feel like this is a prime example of that. But as far as things to like, I think you start with Jonathan Quick. He's going to have his own section a little bit later in today's episode, but for right now, we'll just mention that he stopped 20 of the 21 shots that he faced. Hopefully this performance by Quick will alleviate some of the concerns that I think all of us have about him coming into the season. Not that Quick was like terrible last year or anything like that, but anytime you've got a professional athlete that's entering or well into his late 30s, and in fact, Quick is going to turn 40 in season this year, I think it's only natural that there's some concern that eventually they could start to slip a little bit. Father Time remains undefeated, and eventually he catches up to everybody. But you watch this game here, and you see how Quick performed. And it's not like this is like the greatest performance of his career or anything like that, but he made a lot of really nice saves in this game. So that was obviously very encouraging as well, and deserved a better fate. When I said in the intro that Quick deserved better than this, I'm not throwing the rest of the Rangers under the bus or anything like that. I'm just mentioning that he was very, very good, probably deserved to win this game, and obviously it just didn't go that way. I think something else that was very, very encouraging about this loss for the Rangers here is the fact that the defenseman mostly held up. Quick, again, he made some really nice saves in this one, but I never felt like he was in a situation in this game where his teammates were completely hanging him out to dry. I thought for the most part, they defended pretty well in front of him. I mean, the fact that they only allowed 21 shots on goal, obviously that's a positive in and of itself, but it's interesting because you've got this Ranger defenseman core here that's basically kind of a makeshift group right now. They obviously went into this game without Carson Soucy, who had that scary injury in the last one. You've got Matthew Robertson playing in only his third career NHL game and his first NHL game that actually mattered because, of course, last year he played in the 2 meaningless games at the very end when the Rangers were eliminated from playoff contention. But you've got defense pairings that they're kind of rotating throughout the night. It was really interesting how they started this game. They, on the depth chart, had Robertson listed alongside Borgen, and they had Vakanainen remaining with Schneider on the third pairing. But they were kind of rotating this group throughout the night and certainly throughout the early parts of this game as well. They start with the pairings that I just mentioned, but then it's Robertson and Borgen, and then it's Vakanainen and Schneider, and then it's Robertson and Schneider. So they were shuffling the deck a little bit. But overall, again, the defensemen mostly played well in this game. I thought for the most part defended the crease well and didn't allow too many second chance opportunities. Overall, just a solid night. Also, another encouraging aspect of this game, these new line combinations I thought looked pretty good. And we especially got to focus in on Cooley, JT Miller, and Connor Sheary. These guys were all over the place in this game. Their styles really seem to complement each other very well. There was a play that I absolutely loved, and this is a situation where it felt like the equalizer was on the way. And the Caps have the puck in their zone, and they're kind of along the boards on the side there. JT Miller steps up, delivers a hit, knocks his guy off of the puck. Will Cooley is Johnny on the spot. He follows up the play. He immediately gets to the loose puck, and quick as a hiccup, dishes across the ice to the other side to Connor Sheary, and Sheary got the shot away. And again, just a better save by Lindgren. I mean, that's a very evergreen statement to make about this game. You could say it over and over and over again throughout the entire night. Just a better save by Lindgren. That was one example of it here, but I did like what that line gave us tonight in this game, for even though the Rangers lost. You've also got another encouraging sign being that Mika Zibanejad continues to play well. This is a prime example of why you can't always go by the stats, because just as sure as there's times where a certain player will have a decent point total over a certain handful of games, but maybe he's not really playing that great, this is the opposite of that. Mika's played very, very well to start the season. Don't know that he stood out in this one as much as he did in the previous game, but he had a golden opportunity to score in this one, and that was Lindgren's save of the night. And a lot of you, I'm sure, probably know what I'm talking about. The 2-on-1 with Panarin. Panarin held the puck for as long as he could, made you think he was going to shoot it, snapped a really quick pass over to Mika Zibanejad. Mika hammered it. Maybe could have elevated a little bit more, but it was just a better save by Lindgren on that play. And there's that phrase again. But Mika continues to play well. Been a little bit snake bitten, I think, at times to start the season here. But if he continues to play this brand of hockey, it's going to be a nice bounce back season for Mika Zibanejad. Only the one goal and no assist in 4 games so far. But again, I think his play thus far is also telling you why you can't always just go by point total, especially when it comes to a small sample size. But I would say maybe the biggest plus of this game, and you could even throw the rest of this early season into this group as well, more defensively responsible hockey by the New York Rangers. This team is not bleeding odd man rushes. They're doing a decent job keeping the front of the net clean and moving guys out of there. There haven't been a whole lot of instances where, somebody just sets up shop in front of the Ranger net. So that's obviously been nice to see. They're fighting for pucks. That there seems to be urgency for some of those 50-50 puck battles this season. And they're winning a decent amount of them. I would say that zone exits are still very much a work in progress for this Ranger team, particularly the defensemen. But I didn't think it was really a problem in this game. Could have been a little bit better, but I don't think it's something that was, killing the Rangers from the time the puck dropped until the final horn or anything along those lines. So that was a little bit better. And you're now in a situation, if you're a fan of this Ranger team, where you're looking at everything that's happened so far, and you look at a certain stat, and it's going to make you want to pull your hair out. But the Rangers thus far this season, they played 4 games, obviously. They have allowed a grand total of 3 goals, not counting the 2 empty netters against Pittsburgh. They have allowed 3 goals in 4 games, and yet they have a record of only 2-2. I mentioned on Twitter earlier today, that is diabolical work by the hockey gods. But again, very, very encouraging that the Rangers are playing this kind of team defense early in the season. Obviously, Igor and tonight Quick have a hand in that as well. And certainly on opening night, the score could have been a lot more lopsided in Pittsburgh's favor, and Igor was the main reason why that did not happen. But overall, I mean, you give up only essentially 3 goals in 4 games. You got to be doing something right when it comes to the team defense. The back checking has been far, far better this season as well. So the overall team defense, I think you have to like that. Now, there were a couple of nitpicks. I think something that you could certainly look to, in this game. The third period wasn't great. It wasn't a catastrophe, but I feel like the Rangers, for some reason, they started settling for kind of low danger scoring chances. They're kind of shooting pucks from the blue line and from along the boards and whatnot. There weren't a lot of dangerous chances in the third period. Panarin had one where about 5 minutes left, he went in up the left side, and the puck kind of took a weird deflection and went on net, and Lindgren fought it off. And then Panarin came back out around the other side of the net, picked up the puck, took another shot. That wouldn't go either, but a good scoring chance there for Panarin. With the goalie pulled, though, I mean, there wasn't a whole lot. Cooley got a good chance. We had Panarin setting up Cooley from one side of the rink to the other, passes to the right side, and Cooley got a shot from in deep right at the edge of the right faceoff circle there. And again, just a better save by Lindgren. So, the third period could have been a little bit better, I think. But, you look at this game and you look at the metrics after the game are over. The Rangers' expected goals for in this game was 3.48, whereas the Capitals was under 2. So that tells you everything you need to know about who really deserved to win this game. Again, credit to Lindgren. Sometimes you have to just tip your hat. But I feel like, again, if you're a Ranger fan and you're freaking out about this loss, I don't think we need to go there yet. That there was nothing overly concerning in this game. One thing you could point to is there could be a lack of secondary scoring on this Ranger team, especially now with Trocheck out of the lineup. That's something to keep an eye on going forward. We'll obviously give these guys a fair trial. But overall, again, it seemed more to do with the goalie than anything else in this one, as far as why they were shut out for the second time in as many games played in Madison Square Garden for the Rangers this season. But look, Rangers are going to need to continue to play like this. They're going to need to continue to develop these good habits, because after this, it gets kind of tough. I mean, the Caps are a tough team too, but you're now going at home against the Oilers, at the Leafs, at the Canadiens, and home against the Wild. So it's a tough stretch, and you just really hope, if you're a fan of this Ranger team, that these guys, the Rangers, cumulatively do not get upset, do not get discouraged by playing as well as they did in this game last night and not getting rewarded for it. If they continue to play this brand of hockey, we've got nothing to worry about. We'll obviously see what happens next. Just a second, we're going to shift gears, talk about the most recent Ranger injury, that being to Carson Soucy, which obviously resulted in Matthew Robertson making his season debut. We'll be talking a little bit about that and what to expect from Robertson going forward, and just the injury landscape as a whole. We'll get to all that in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer that you do not want to miss. Right now, new customers, can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you will unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. FanDuel is the best because it's got something for you no matter how you like to bet. Whether you're into same-game parlays, or you really like those player props, or you got to bet on your team or bet against your favorite team, or you got a certain hunch that you just feel you need to play, FanDuel has got you covered. FanDuel has got something for you. It makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or you love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. All right, let's go and keep everything rolling here on Locked On New York Rangers. Big shout out to the everydayers. As always, thank you guys so much for supporting this podcast. In the next episode, we're basically going to do a deep dive on all of these early season injuries that the Rangers have suffered. What the short-term ramifications are, the long-term ramifications, some of the position battles that have emerged as a result of these injuries. Now you've kind of got Brodzinski versus Parsonen, and maybe even Robertson versus Mackey. Mackey was just recalled. I think they would defer to Robertson, but maybe Mackey gets a game. We'll see how that goes. But we'll break that all down in the next episode of Locked On New York Rangers. Also worth pointing out, Rangers might have dodged a bullet with Vladislav Gavrikov last night. He was in a really awkward, strange collision with Ryan Leonard. They both went down. Their legs were entangled. Gavrikov fell down awkwardly, and I guess he was okay. He hit the ice pretty hard, and like I said, their legs were all twisted, and it didn't look good, but it looks like both players got out of that relatively unscathed, but I was certainly holding my breath on that one. The Rangers cannot lose any more defensemen, put it that way. But as far as the defenseman situation right now, as we mentioned just a second ago, Carson Soucy hits IR. Scary injury in the last game. He's lucky he was able to skate off under his own power. And I haven't seen an official timetable for Soucy yet, but the smart money was always on him probably missing this game, the second game of a back-to-back after such a scary injury. He was trying to deliver a check in the last game against the Penguins, and only his leg made contact with his opponent. So, his leg shoots up into the air, and then he shoots up into the air, and basically was parallel to the ice, completely off the ice, head first, about as hard as you can hit the boards. And again, just glad he was okay and was able to get up and get off the ice. But, unfortunate for Soucy too, because the one thing I've said in his defense since he was traded to the Rangers last season is that, yes, he did play poorly last year. I don't think anybody would deny that. But Carson Soucy also walked into a complete and utter dumpster fire. Carson Soucy is not a guy that's going to come in and immediately fix the culture and the entire blue line and make everything better. He's just not on that level. But he has been a good defenseman in the NHL in the past. Rangers are obviously hoping for more of that in the future. And Dave Maloney pointed this out when the Rangers played the Sabres, and I would agree, probably Soucy's best game of his tenure with the New York Rangers thus far. And then the next game he gets injured, and now he's out. So he's no longer an option, at least for the short-term future. I saw a lot of people kind of chattering, and a couple of people even responded to me on Twitter. Why not call up Scott Morrow to step into the lineup for the New York Rangers? Why go with a Connor Mackey and just a veteran such as Mackey over a young guy with upside like Scott Morrow? There's a couple of reasons for that. First of all, the reason that I think a lot of people were throwing out there, and certainly it's true, is that it sounds to me, if I'm understanding this correctly, the Rangers literally cannot afford to call up Scott Morrow because they don't have a lot of cap space, very little of it, in fact. The Rangers had $846,000 in cap space. Scott Morrow's cap hit is $916,000 when he's in the NHL, and Connor Mackey's is $775,000. So they can fit Mackey in under the salary cap. They cannot fit Morrow, which is obviously an unfortunate break for Morrow. But honestly, even if that was not the case, even if they could fit in Morrow under the salary cap, I don't think they would do it, at least not right at this moment. Because to me, when Morrow didn't make this team, that was a sign that, okay, they're going to keep him in the AHL for a while, and they're going to allow him to get some more seasoning. To me, with Morrow, it was always going to be one of two extremes when it came to training camp and the preseason. When all that was said and done, either Morrow was going to be in the NHL, in the opening night lineup, and playing in every single New York Rangers game, or at least the vast, vast majority of them. Maybe once in a while he steps out for Vakanainen, but for the most part, he would be an every night starter for the Rangers. It was either going to be that, or it was going to be the other extreme, which is what we're seeing right now. He's sent down to the Hartford Wolfpack, and he's getting some more seasoning there. I don't think the Rangers were going to have him not make the opening night roster and send him to Hartford and then call him up like 4 games into the Rangers season and right when the Hartford Wolfpack season starts as well. I think once they sent him down, that was an indication that you're probably looking at least 15 or 20 games that Morrow is going to play with the Hartford Wolfpack. Now, I could be wrong. Maybe later today they change their mind and somebody gets waived or something happens and they bring Morrow back up. It's always possible. But to me, once they sent him down, that was an indication that he was going to stay there for at least a little while and get some more seasoning with the Hartford Wolfpack. So with that being the case, you've got some other options with Soucy being out, and the one that they used last night was, of course, Matthew Robertson. They also called up Connor Mackey from the AHL, but the smart money always seemed to be on Robertson stepping into the lineup and Mackey being the healthy scratch and serving as the 7th defenseman. As far as Robertson goes, I mean, I joked about this earlier, and I might have even said something about it on Twitter, but Robertson finally gets to play in an AHL game that actually matters. The Rangers drafted him in 2019 in the second round 6 years ago, and he finally made his NHL debut last year. The 2 games at the end of the season that didn't count. I mean, they counted, but they weren't going to get the Rangers into the playoffs. They had been eliminated by that point. So Robertson finally gets his chance, and I thought he did all right. He ended up with 18 minutes and 8 seconds of ice time, which interestingly is about 4 minutes more, almost right on the dot, 4 minutes more of ice time than Earl Vakanainen got, which kind of begs the question, like, okay, well, if Robertson's first game, if he's out there for that much more than Vakanainen is, then why was Vakanainen playing over Robertson the first 3 games of the season? Now, maybe Sullivan saw something during the game, felt Robertson was playing better, and I do think Robertson, overall was solid in this game, but that did certainly stand out to me. That kind of struck me as like, he's behind Vakanainen in the pecking order, but the first time he gets into a game, he gets 4 minutes more than Vakanainen. So that was interesting. That's something to keep an eye on going forward as well. But, Robertson overall, like I said, I think he did okay. He ended up with a shot on goal and 2 hits. He had a play that I really liked. It was while the Rangers were buzzing in the first period. They had a long, sustained offensive zone possession, and he did a really good job pinching to keep an offensive zone possession alive. You had JT Miller, Will Cooley, they're out there. They're strong on the puck. They're keeping the offensive zone possession alive. They're cycling it a little bit. The Rangers have a line change, and the Caps finally had a chance to get the puck out of the zone, but Robertson read the play very quickly, stepped up into the Rangers offensive zone, and quickly, played the puck around back behind the net. It was a good pinch. It's a difficult assessment to make as a defenseman. When do I pinch and when do I stay back? But Robertson saw that he could get to the puck first, and he did it, and he kept the play alive. The only kind of miscue that I think Robertson had in this game that stood out to me in a negative way was actually also in the first period, very much at the end of the first period, only about 20 seconds or so to go. But the Rangers had an offensive zone possession. And again, they're swarming a little bit. They're creating some havoc, and the Capitals are back on their heels. The puck comes back to Robertson, and he basically fumbled it right to the Caps. I think what happened here is the puck came to Robertson, and in his mind, he's thinking, okay, I'm going to quickly pass the puck over here, right? He looked to move the puck very quickly. And then I think he kind of second-guessed himself and thought the better of it and tried not to pass. But he kind of, almost like a check swing in baseball. It was like a check pass by Robertson. And so he tried to not move the puck, but he just basically tapped it right to the Capitals. And the Capitals broke out. Now, the good news is that the Rangers, Robertson included, all got back very quickly on the back check, and they prevent the Capitals from, getting a golden scoring chance at the end of the period. That goes back to what we were talking about earlier in today's episode, where the Rangers have been back checking a little bit better this season. But, yeah, I mean, overall, again, solid night for Robertson. It's always funny to me how little people talk about Robertson, just because, the Rangers really do catch a lot of flack and come under fire for, maybe not drafting the right player, or maybe they draft the right player, but they don't do so well when it comes to that player's development. And, you never hear anything about Matthew Robertson. We're talking about a guy that was drafted in the second round 6 years ago. He's now in his mid-20s, and that was his third NHL game last night. And you just don't hear Ranger fans either clamor for Matthew Robertson or label him a bust or blame the Rangers for where he's at right now, only playing in 3 NHL games thus far in his career. It's just kind of funny to me. Like he just never gets brought up all that often. But man, what a luxury this would be. If Matthew Robertson can even just develop into a serviceable, decent, dare I say solid third pair NHL defenseman, that's going to be a cool story, because, again, this is somebody that's kind of been forgotten about and left for dead. So with that being the case, if he comes in and he's serviceable and maybe even fights his way in the lineup, maybe he moves ahead of somebody like Vakanainen in the pecking order, it's going to be a situation that's very much, better late than never, kind of like that. And I was wondering at the start of the season why they didn't send him down to the Wolfpack. It just felt like him being in the 7th defenseman role was kind of an odd fit. But maybe they actually do still believe he can be a decent player. Maybe they didn't want to take that very small risk of somebody playing him were he to have been put on waivers. Because if the Rangers would have sent him down to the Wolfpack, he would have had to clear waivers. I think he would have. But as we know, it only takes one of the other 31 NHL teams to claim him. And just like that, he's gone. So maybe that's a risk that they just didn't want to take. And maybe they do. Maybe they do still think that he can be a solid defenseman. Maybe Mike Sullivan and his coaching staff like Robertson more than previous coaching staffs have. We'll see. But either way, I think it's going to be a very fascinating storyline to track going forward. We'll see if he gets another one. I'm very curious to see, because honestly, you could make a case for anybody out of Mackey, Robertson, Vakanainen. I wouldn't be stunned to see any of those three as the odd man out for the next game. It'll probably be Mackey, but I don't think anything's set in stone, and we'll see how the Rangers look to play it against the Oilers. And that's going to be a tough assignment, as we know. But we'll keep everything rolling just a second. I want to shift our attention. We talked about how the Rangers got goalied in this game. Well, the other goalie was pretty darn good, too. That was, of course, Jonathan Quick. He had a heck of a night for the Rangers. And I want to talk about his performance and why I think Ranger fans should still be feeling good about having Jonathan Quick on this roster, despite the fact that he is getting older, despite the fact that he will turn 40 in season. I believe January is his birthday, so about midway through the season. But we'll discuss all of that in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people cannot name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an easy-to-use, all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in just minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off of your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDON NHL. All right, let's go ahead and close out today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers by talking a little bit about Jonathan Quick, Mr. Reliable, steady backup goalie for the Rangers ever since he's been here. Anytime that you're dealing with a professional athlete who's getting on and getting into what is very clearly the back nine of their career, and specifically once they get into their late 30s, we're talking like 37, 38, 39 in Jonathan Quick's case, I think there's always going to be a little bit of nervousness, a little bit of apprehension on the part of that fan base as far as like, all right, well, I mean, how long can he keep this going? How long can he continue to be a steady, rock-solid contributor for my team? And in the case of Jonathan Quick, I think it's even more extreme because I've said before, I feel like NHL goalie, as far as, looking at the big four of professional sports, all the different positions that there are, that is probably the most demanding position in any of them. So that's true of anybody that's getting into their late 30s when it comes to pro sports, but that much more so when you're talking about goalie. I think some people were nervous about Quick coming into this year because to begin with, I mean, year two with Quick with the Rangers was a little bit of a step back from year one. Obviously, part of that was the Rangers took a massive step back as a team from year one of Jonathan Quick to year two with Jonathan Quick. And on top of that, Quick wasn't all that good in the preseason this year either. But I would counter by saying that one thing that I do remember about the first preseason where Quick was on the Rangers is that he wasn't any good that preseason either. And I get the feeling that he understands he's getting older. There's certain things he's got to do to make sure he's ready to go for, another season in the NHL, even though he is the backup now, as opposed to, the best goalie in the NHL. So with that being the case, I get the feeling that he might not be going full bore. He might not be, demanding absolute perfection out of himself in the preseason. I'm sure he still wants to do well, doesn't want to embarrass himself, but he's also got to know that, the games that actually count are ahead of me. And I think that's what we've seen from Jonathan Quick multiple times in the preseason since he's been on the New York Rangers. But one thing I've also always said, whether we're talking about Quick or a player on the Rangers, a player from around the NHL, or any player around sports, do not bet against a legend. Now, it is just one game here, and it's not like he was under tremendous fire this entire game. Again, I think that's a testament to how well the Rangers played defensively, the fact that Quick only had to face 21 shots. But he was very, very good, and he made a couple of tough saves, and he was there when the Rangers needed him. And these guys that they have legendary careers, they're going to be going to the Hall of Fame. They win multiple championships. They get late in their career, and everybody is always so trigger happy to declare a certain pro athlete washed. Never bet against a legend because they might not be the same player they were when they were 25, but they will figure out a way to get essentially every last drop out of the orange, basically. I think that's an expression that people use every so often. So that being the case, I think that's kind of what we've been seeing from Jonathan Quick the last few years, and I think we'll continue to see it moving forward. Again, it's going to take a while before we get like a significant sample size with Quick because that's just the nature of the backup goalie. They're only going to play so often, so it'll be a while before, Quick gets 5 games, before he gets 10 games, and, we see how he's faring this season. But so far, so good. This was very, very encouraging for Quick in this game. He's up against a team that had the best record in the Eastern Conference last season and a team that certainly had the Rangers number last season, but he was very sharp right from the get-go in this game. I thought the portion of this game where you could argue where maybe the Caps had a little bit of an upper hand on the Rangers was right at the start. And Quick, first couple of minutes, a minute or two into this game, he's already made 2 really nice saves. The first minute, you had the Capitals going right up the center of the ice. Quick made a really solid save there to keep the puck out. And then almost literally a minute later, you had Quick moving from his left to his right to make a sliding save. And that save in particular, he had better saves than this on the night, but that one is encouraging because with goalies, I feel like the first thing to go, once they're getting older and becoming veteran players, is that lateral movement. And the fact that Quick was able to move so fast from one side of the goal crease to the other early in a game before he's even like really, feeling the flow of the game and got the adrenaline going and everything, for him to be able to do that and make that kind of a save, again, very, very encouraging. And I'll say this too, Igor Shesterkin is not the only goalie on the New York Rangers who is capable of bailing out his teammates. Igor, I joked about this in Rise and Rangers the other day, but he's bailed out, I would say, no fewer than like 6 different teammates thus far this season. But Quick, he bailed out Will Borgen early in this game as well. Borgen did a nice job blocking a shot in front of the Ranger net, and that's all well and good, but he started to skate away with the puck, and unfortunately, he got his pocket picked by Beauvillier. Beauvillier was still behind him, between Quick and Borgen, and he lifted Borgen's stick, took the puck away, and then had a great shot right from the doorstep, and Jonathan Quick stoned him, made an awesome point-blank save there. Just the fact that Quick was anticipating this, or at least aware of the fact that an opportunity like this could be coming for the Capitals, because it looked like, Borgen blocked the shot, and he's just going to skate away with it, and we're all good, and Beauvillier stole the puck, but Quick was there. He was ready. He was on his toes, and he made an outstanding save, certainly one of his best of the night. So that was awesome. And the other thing, even the one goal that Quick allowed in this game, I don't know how many goalies in the NHL are stopping this. This was very, very difficult to defend. You have Ovechkin taking a shot from the left side. He's got Beauvillier in deep, and Beauvillier just a perfect redirection. I mean, I don't know what else you can say. It goes off of his stick and goes into the top shelf over the right shoulder of Jonathan Quick. So, I mean, again, you show me a goalie who's keeping that puck out of the net. That'd be very difficult to do. The deflections are always tough, and Beauvillier put this in a spot where I just don't even know how you keep that puck out. So, again, very, very strong performance by Jonathan Quick. There was a play in the third period, too, where the Caps were up 1-0, and he basically dove across the crease to keep the puck out of the net. It was saved by Sheary more so than it was saved by Quick. But again, just the fact that he's selling out and diving and looking as athletic as he does on that play, that's very, very encouraging. But a great play by Sheary. He was able to deflect the scoring chance out of play and up into the netting to get a stoppage there. But again, Quick was very good in that regard. That lateral movement that we saw multiple times in this game. While we're talking about Quick, all this is to say nothing about what an important player he's become behind the scenes for the New York Rangers. By all accounts, it sounds like he is, one of the leaders behind closed doors, and, obviously a very well-respected player in that locker room as well. So that being the case, I mean, I'm thrilled that he's back for his third season of Ranger hockey. I really like the signing when the Rangers did it a couple of years ago. They signed him to that one-year deal. And I know a lot of people weren't really feeling it. And, Quick had a couple of tough seasons with the Kings and whatnot. And, oh, man, why are we bringing this old veteran whose best days are behind him? To me, again, it just came down to never bet against a legend. And if the Rangers ever need their backup goalie to really come through in a big spot, as I said at the time, and I'll say it now as well, I'll take my chances on Jonathan Quick than I will on some just random journeyman goalie who's been bouncing around the NHL for the past 10 years. So happy that he's back. Now, I never thought for a second when the Rangers initially signed him that he would be on this team for 3 years. 3 years and counting. Who's to say he won't be back for a fourth year? If he plays well this season, could be another in-season 1-year extension on the way for Jonathan Quick. We'll keep an eye on that for sure. But again, it's just one game. Can't jump to too many conclusions here. But again, I thought a very, very encouraging performance by Jonathan Quick, even in defeat. One more thing that I'll mention here. It didn't really fit into any other part of the episode, but I got to mention this because I know a lot of you loved it. How about Matt Rempe driving Tom Wilson into the boards in this game? That was fun, wasn't it? Man, that was almost worth, I mean, I wouldn't trade this hit for a win, but you think about it for just a second. The two of them were kind of jawing at each other a little bit earlier in the game, and Wilson comes over the Ranger blue line, and Rempe is there. And man, I mean, just body on body, sent Wilson flying through the air, crashing into the boards. I wouldn't root for anybody to get injured, not even Tom Wilson, but to see him kind of get rocked like that and knocked off of his feet. Anytime any player on the Rangers can do something like that to Tom Wilson, it's a positive thing. So obviously props to Rempe for that. And I know I'm not the only Ranger fan that obviously enjoyed seeing that, but we'll call it there. If you guys would like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @J617. Once again, @JCHIK17. And definitely subscribe to the Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.